Okay, so I know you, Judy.
Yes.
Good to see you. How are you?
Hi, Roseanne.
Roseanne, Lenny.
Hi.
Good to see you.
Justin Turner.
I recognize you from the videos.
Yeah.
Kathy. All right.
I'm good. How are you,
I'm
Marc?
all right. Good to see you. Thanks. Heather, do you want me to roll a chair around for this side for you?
Huh? No, I'm getting in the mix with my friends here.
All right. Very good. Okay, so how would you like to conduct this meeting? Do you want me to give you my spiel and then I answer questions? Do you want to?
We've heard the spiel.
Have you heard my spiel?
Absolutely.
When have you heard my spiel?
On the floor of the assembly the night that you voted yes.
No, would you like to hear my spiel about why I voted?
I'd love to understand why.
Okay, all right. So you're familiar with the California Air Resource Board,
Mm-hmm.
correct? I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page as far as where we are as feet. We understand that the previous form of cap and trade was due to expire in 2020, correct? Guys, give me feedback just so I know that we're all on the same page. Okay, so the Republicans were approached at the beginning of the year, and they were really approached by industry. And when I say industry, I mean agriculture, oil production, the fracking industry, drilling, our cement, our asphalt, our manufacturers, our truckers. I mean, you go down the list of anybody that employs someone in California, and they said, hey, Republicans, we're concerned because cap and trade, as it stands right now, it's a really bad program, but we're surviving in it. And we understand that you guys don't like it. We understand that this is a problem and it hurts the economy of California, but we're afraid of what the alternative is. When cap and trade expires, the alternative is the Air Resource Board takes over with what they call command and control. Now, the big problem is AB 32, which was passed 11 years ago that established CARB. Then you had it renewed last year with SB 32, which put together these very strict guidelines that California has to pass these emissions. They have to reduce 40% of 1990 level greenhouse gas emissions by the year 2030. That's crazy.
It is crazy.
It's crazy, and they didn't give California's industry a way to achieve that goal. They just said this is what you must do. So they gave authority to CARB to enforce that goal, pretty much unchecked. So the industries are looking at it and saying, we're done. We're done in this state unless we can come up with a method to be able to achieve that goal in a reasonable way. Now, cap and trade was not something the Republicans supported, period. I campaigned against it in my last election cycle because I believe that it's detrimental and harmful to our industry, it's detrimental and harmful to the state and to the working middle class families that I care deeply about. When it was brought to us and they said, hey, this is the problem. It's currently under legal review. It's been pending in court. It's up in, I think it's in the California Supreme Court right now. The California Chamber of Commerce has been the plaintiff suing because it was originally passed with only a simple majority. And they believe that constituted a tax because the original allocations of credits were sold as opposed to given. And because if they're sold or required to be sold, then that's a quasi-tax. So they were challenging that, and it had been 11 years in court. They had not won. So they were looking at it going, okay, well, we believe this will go to this United States Supreme Court, and with the current configuration of the justices there, we could prevail. But it's up for renewal. So the California Chamber of Commerce, who is the plaintiff, came to us and said, we would really like Republicans to engage on this issue. We would like you to engage on it because if we can bring this issue with reforms, it might be something we can not only tolerate, but possibly even prosper under. And if we don't have the give and take of the negotiation for the reforms, then it's going to be left to the environmental justice of the very far hyper left to decide what the legislation is, because Jerry Brown has chosen to get out of, to be able to bypass the court decision. He's requiring not only an urgency clause, 2/3 vote requirement, but also he wanted the 2/3 vote so that he would inoculate himself from the court case if it goes against him. So 2 reasons. So the Republicans, we sat down, all 25 of us in our caucuses, we said, do we negotiate or do we not? Do we get involved in this? Do we engage? And we decided, yes, we're going to engage.
Not everybody.
Well,
only 7 of you decided that you were going to engage.
Well, no, let me continue, because I'm taking you through the whole path.
All
I'm
right.
giving you the whole pound. There were 25 of us, and we said, yes, we'll engage. And we started negotiations, and this was months of negotiations, and there was a lot of back and forth that went through, and there were tons of meetings. And I was not involved in every meeting, but I did have staff members in all of these meetings to keep me apprised of where we are in our negotiations. There was a whole series of what we felt were necessary reforms to this policy, necessary reforms. And we said if we do not achieve these necessary reforms, we cannot support this bill. And there were attempts where the reforms were not put into the legislation, and we had to push back. But ultimately, the reforms that we were asking for were put into the legislation. We tasked only a few assembly members with leading the negotiations, because you can't have everybody trying to negotiate at the same time. You can't have too many cooks, it'll spoil the broth. And ultimately, there was legislation that reformed the previous cap and trade system to what is now the new cap and trade system, the one that I did ultimately vote and support. Now, I've heard the criticisms as far as there being a gas tax associated with the new reform cap and trade legislation. I'll tell you, if you've had a chance to read the legislation, there's no reference to a gas tax, but I did have to do some research to understand where were these accusations originating from. And so I found a letter dated March 29th from Assemblymember Vince Vaughn to the Legislative Analyst's Office. And it was a response from the LAO to Vince Vaughn, it was from the LAO to Vince Vaughn, dated March 29th, that stated, you know, effectively, there's two possibilities that could occur here. And this was referencing the current cap and trade system, not the reformed cap and trade system, because that was not in existence yet in March 29. It said if cap and trade is extended as it is right now, based on what the cost of carbon would be slated as, their estimate of for every $10 of carbon, that would equate to 9 cents impact on your gasoline costs. They said the variation could happen by the year 2031 would be an increase in the cost of gasoline from 24 to 63 cents in 14 years from now. But it followed up and said, if ARB, California Air Resource Board, takes over with command and control, you could see an increase of upwards of $1.50 to $6 within 2 years.
Okay.
That's significant. So when I
Both are
look
significant.
at, sorry?
Both are significant.
Correct. But when I'm looking at between 24 cents to 63 cents in 14 years, compared to $1.50 to potentially $6 in 2 years, that's fairly impressive that there's a distinct difference.
Well, that's where I kind of gotta interject here, because here's my question. As
I wanted to continue with my part, if you don't mind. Then we'll get to the question and
okay.
answer.
I mean, we still only have 15 minutes, and we've already gone through half of it. So do we?
Well, I'm trying to give you the narrative so you have a clear understanding
Okay.
of where my decision
You
was
started
made.
early too, so.
Okay.
Yeah. So when we look at the industries that came to us and said, please, we need you to assist us. We need to box out the environmental justice, or else we're going to have a command and control system where we are guaranteed to lose all of these jobs. And they estimated the 200,000 jobs that I used in my floor speech. They estimated the $16 billion impact to as far as what we were able to do with the reform legislation and tax reductions. We worked with those industries to be able to write the reform legislation, and I really believe that we were able to achieve some dramatic reforms. And I understand there's been a lot of minimization of the 153, illegal fire tax on the people that have to pay it, but there are 800,000 individuals in California that were being subjected to that $153 fire tax, which is now gone. So we start going down the list of the reforms that we were able to engage with and actually achieve. I believe that it's fairly significant. Then we also look at, well, with the reforms that have been put into place with this new legislation, will we actually see the LAO's estimated increase in gasoline costs? I don't believe we will at all, because the $16 billion in tax decreases are coming in the forms of manufacturers' credits, tax decreases in general, where the oil producers themselves said, we're not going to see a cost increase to ourselves to produce this product. Now, mind you, oil is a commodity, so we can't control the price of oil with what goes on the world scene, because we all understand how that happens. But as far as the cost of production, to do it within California with California's refineries, to be given commitments from those industries that this will not impact their cost of doing business, and so the estimated increases that continuing the existing cap and trade system would possibly project hypothetically through the LAO will not exist. And we add in the constitutional amendment that in 2024 we have another opportunity to figure out where the proceeds from the cap and trade auction dollars are spent, puts the bullet train on the chopping block.
No, it doesn't.
Well, actually it does,
No, it
because
does not.
the governor is unable to bond long-term bonds, issue additional long-term bonds for the construction of the bullet train if he does not have a dedicated revenue stream to pay for it.
And you guys are gonna stop that in 2024, is that what you're telling us? Because you guys couldn't stop this tax increase here.
Well, as I continue, currently, the funding that the governor has for the construction of whatever bullet train elements that he's doing, he has that already in his pocket. But for issuing additional bonds going forward, you need to have a guaranteed funding source for, New York to be able to issue those bonds. If the funding source is in question in 2024, how can you possibly issue a 20 or 30-year bond to be able to fund the next legs of the bullet train if there's no guarantee that the funds are going to be there?
Probably because at every step of the way in this process for the last couple of decades, Republicans sell out and give them what they want anyway. And I listened to your presentation here and I appreciate that, but it sure sounds to me that what you're saying is that basically you guys are just the dim light party. Your position is that the Republicans are going to give us hell at 1,000 degrees and we're going to do our best to give it to you at 900 degrees. That we're not actually going to stand up for anything contrary to what they're doing, we're just going to try to make it less painful. Is that the Republican Party's basically platform now? Is the Democrats are going to screw it up and we're just going to try to make it a little bit more palatable? We're not going to actually try to stop it.
So what I found fascinating was since this, since this topic, the vote came out, and I put my cell phone number out there, and I think I've probably received maybe, I don't know, I probably clocked near 3,000 phone calls now. And I've made every effort to try and call back as many people as possible, and even people that are very hostile, that have left extremely aggressive voicemails. I'm no exaggeration, I've probably spoken with nearly 600 people. And what I've found is I've explained this issue and explained the options that were available to me, where I'm looking at potentially eliminating 200,000 jobs in the state of California, and these are good paying jobs, potentially seeing industries going out of business in California, or doing something that makes sense to reform a program that I don't appreciate to a form where the industries themselves could potentially still do business and also thrive. I'm going to choose saving those middle class jobs every single time. What I found fascinating to me is there actually is a sub-segment, it's a small group, it's a minority of people that really believe the better choice would have been for me to allow the economy of California to run off of a cliff so that someone can stand over the carcass as it sits there and point and say, well, they're wrong, I was right, look at all the jobs that have been destroyed because of those policies, and that's going to change people's voting patterns in the future. I should jeopardize 200,000 jobs to be able to make a political point. I will never agree to that. I will never be that person.
So now we have the new De Leon bill coming up to make California 100% zero emissions by 2045.
Yeah, I know, that's just...
So, exactly.
I know.
So there goes our cars, fossil fuels. There goes, everything's gonna have to be retrograded to solar. The little business over here on the street corner, they're not gonna be able to have their air conditioning anymore, right?
But
So we're going to a new level now. We've just gone to a new level
I know.
because of cap and trade.
But
Where does
it's
it
not,
stop?
It's not because of cap and trade, it's because of SB 32. It started with
Well,
AB
yeah,
32.
all of them together.
But no, but it's SB 32, AB 32, and then SB 32. And now the bill, I don't know the number that you're referencing.
100.
Is it SB 100?
Yeah.
So now SB 100. So those are the bills that we have to say, okay, let's put all hands on deck and let's try and mobilize people to be able to influence not just the people that already support you, but influence the people that don't agree with you. Go into the districts where you have people on the very far left and express to them how this makes an impact into all of the industries. My job when I was elected, what I committed to do was to save jobs in California, to reduce regulations, to reduce taxes. My job was to make sure that I made California a state that people can continue to thrive in, so that they can raise their families in and be successful. I believe that I've done that.
So your position is then, because the Democrats are always going to do what they're going to do, and they're going to raise taxes and raise regulations. So your position is, as long as you raise or support something that lowers the tax rate, let me rephrase this. Your position is that since the Democrats are going to raise taxes and raise regulation, that as long as you can support something that doesn't raise taxes as much or increase the regulation as much, then you can basically argue that you did a good job and saved jobs and what have you, and we should keep voting for Republicans, right?
Well,
Again-
actually, I don't think I've made any of those arguments.
Well, yeah, because you're basically saying the Democrats are going to do this. If we can do slightly less, then I've saved jobs. Therefore, I voted to raise taxes or I voted to raise costs, but I didn't vote to raise it as much as the Democrats would have done it. So therefore, you should reelect me. That's your position.
Well, actually, I've not asked for you to reelect me at all, and I don't think you actually have the opportunity not living in my
No, you don't.
district.
But you know my point. So I don't know why you're politically spinning it. So I'm making the statement very clear. If the Democrats say they want to raise taxes and they want to increase regulation, your argument is simply by voting for something that raises taxes to a less amount, right? But still raises taxes, or increases regulation slightly less, then your argument is that you save jobs and you help protect the taxpayers and what have you, therefore you did your job. That's your position.
No, actually, what I've stated is, I looked at two options that were available to me based on legislation that was passed that I voted against, SB 32. And I looked at the two choices that were available, and by engaging, because when you look at this map that's behind you, people listening to you right now, they can't see it, but you can see a very unique shaped district. And a lot of people represent districts that are what they consider a moderate district, or they may have what they consider a safe district. I have a very divided district. In my district, I have 1/3 are registered Democrats, 1/3 are registered Republican, and 1/3 hate both parties because they're disgusted with the narrative of let's grab the pitchforks and the torches and let's go call everyone a heretic. They're looking for people that are trying to come up with common sense solutions to be able to make California a safe place for them to raise their families. When I look at the district that I've been elected to represent, and I look at the options that are available to me, I will always side on the side of middle-class families and protecting jobs and industry in California. But you know what? In my district, they care greatly about the environment as well. When I grew up in San Bernardino, there were many days where we couldn't see the mountains behind us because of smog alerts. It is something that they care deeply about when you ask anyone, but they want that balance.
The state's done enough. The state has done enough.
Excuse me, let me continue.
But you've talked for like 12 to 15 minutes we've been here.
You came to meet with me in my office.
We came to ask you questions to get answers, not political spin. You articulated why you voted the way you did, and then I asked a question and you don't really want to give a legit answer. Your position is that the reason why you supported the cap and trade bill is because it would lower tax or lower the cost of gas less. It would keep the cost of gas lower than under the original plan, and it would decrease the amount of regulation so that it wasn't as high as it would before under the Democrats. So your plan was to increase the cost of gas, increase regulation and what have you, but simply to do it at a slightly less rate than the Democrats.
No,
So-
absolutely not. What I did is I voted to reform bad legislation. And the new reformed legislation, I do not believe, based on the information that's been provided to me, that we will see a cost in gasoline because of it, period. That's what I
you don't
said.
think-
And Mark, one of the things that we keep avoiding here is that we're also going to affect, this vote is going to affect industry, trucking coming into our state, big time. Goods on our shelves, big time. So we are going to be affected. Us little middle class people are going to be affected because of 7 people who decided to go against the Republican platform and vote in favor of cap and trade. And I think that's where most of us are really kind of,
Right.
you've drawn a line in the sand. You were someone that we trusted, someone we put a lot of faith in, and now we don't know where to go because we're the volunteer force that helped get you into that seat.
Right. So what we were successful in doing was moving the legislation to reform cap and trade so that the trucking association, the logistics industries, all of the groups that you've just mentioned, all of them supported us being involved. Otherwise, it would have been draconian, the amount
Not
of
the
punishment.
ones I've talked to. The people that I have talked to in the trucking industry,
But let me ask
in
you-
the transportation industry,
Have you
they're
asked them
angry.
the
It's going to
question?
cost them buco bucks.
Correct, because they've been misled by being told they're going to receive, on top of the 12.5-cent gas tax or a 19-cent diesel tax that I voted against, because I would never vote for a tax increase. On top of that, they're being told that now they're going to be burdened with the 71-cent. They're being misled with misinformation. If they knew the actual legislation, if someone took the time to read the legislation instead of just going off and creating their own political spin on it, they would realize that the reforms that were put into place are going to prevent exactly what they're accusing those 7 Republicans and the one on the Senate from doing. Had we not engaged, Judy, this is the
That's
most
your
important.
job, though, is to inform your people why you are voting a certain way.
That's why
And
I'm
you
here.
didn't do that to begin with. You should have come to your constituents prior to making that vote. These are the options, folks. What do you want me to do? Why did you not
Well, actually, we did.
go to the people?
We did not have a community coffee scheduled during that window of time, and a lot of times this legislation will come through very quickly, and we do have the new
This
prop.
came in 72 hours.
Well, it did.
Yeah.
Prop 54 did give us the 72 hours, but legitimately we had 72
No, I mean,
hours.
that's a short span.
But I did
No,
have
I
meetings.
understand
I
that.
did have
But-
meetings in this
Yes.
office with industries that would be deeply impacted. Loma Linda University sat across this table from me and said, if we do not have a reform version of cap and trade, we don't know if we can continue building the extra hospital wing. I mean, the new towers. I met with Cal State San Bernardino and they said, we can't continue to admit students. We would have to reduce our admissions. I met and had those meetings about cap and trade. We did not have a community coffee specifically because for me to schedule a community coffee, we have to do it months in advance. It's very difficult to put them together logistically, but every time I've had a community coffee, which I haven't had the privilege of having you attend one, I'm raw and open. I leave it completely open for any question that anyone asks of me, and I give them the very blunt, honest answer that I can. And if I don't know the answer, I'll say straight away, I don't know the answer. But had a community coffee be scheduled during the time that this was being debated, I would have put it out there. And I put it out on Facebook, and I also put my cell phone number for me to answer all of those phone calls that I just talked about. And I explained to every person, I almost ran out of my voice for a period of time because I was raw from speaking to people. And they're infuriated that they feel betrayed if I voted for a 71-cent gas tax increase. I would say to every one of them, and I did, why in the world would I have voted against a 12.5-cent gas tax increase 2 months ago and then flipped around and said, I'm going to vote for one that's 5 or 6 times higher? Clearly, you're missing information here. You're being fed a
It's
spin.
interesting that you said that because I have videotape of Rocky Chavez, Assemblyman Chavez, on my page, where he says that he's one of only 3 people in the entire assembly that even knows what the cap and trade bill is all about. So it's interesting for him to say that he's one of only 3 members in the entire assembly that understands
And that
what
he
cap and
was
trade
the
is
one
about.
that flipped all of you. He's taking full credit, did you?
And then
Yeah.
but we're the ones that's misled or don't know what's going on.
Well, I'm not familiar with the comments made by Assemblymember Chavez to be able to respond to that.
Well, if
Look it up.
he says he's one of 3.
I know, but you're asking me about something that I'm
Yeah.
not.
It,
Fair
it,
enough,
it was
so.
up in 2020. You
Yeah.
this
But-
was
but-
pushed
so you disagree-
so
Okay, so
fast.
that's a really good question.
This was pushed so
I
fast.
can answer that
How do
very
you
well.
know we're not going to get the assembly back to
We're
ours
not.
in 18?
We're not.
We're in a political environment that we can split this. We can split the assembly.
If we would have run the
That's
Gray Davis
unfortunate.
playbook, standing
I
up for the
feel
taxpayer.
firmly on that.
Yeah.
But this was
The
pushed
fear is
so
the governor's
fast.
race.
Yes.
It's the fear is the
that's
governor's
true.
race. The truth is because you look at the numbers in the governor's race right now, you look who has the most amount of money and who has the most amount
Yeah,
of
who's the
MID,
most left?
and you see where they are politically. That's why this was pushed a little bit earlier, in my
The
opinion.
problem we're looking at too is all of the bills that they are withholding, waiting for another Democrat to become governor.
Yeah, SB1.
Our
Or
job,
single-payer healthcare.
the people out on the streets actually doing the footwork for you and the other
Mhm.
candidates, is to make sure that we get a Republican in the top 2. That's the major hurdle. Because of Charles Munger Jr., we don't have a chance. And I guess that's where, if we don't pick up seats, if we don't grab the governor's seat this time around, there is no Republican Party, Mark. It's gone. And that's what you guys have to look at.
And we had a chance. We had a chance to use this issue to basically stand up for the working families and say, you know what, we're not going to go along with the Democrats. We're going to let them own it. You guys, every election cycle, run on the idea that you guys are anti-tax, for limited government against the crazy Democrats, and then when you get up there, you just go along with it and come back and say, oh, well, we got you something slightly better. Well, how does that differentiate our brand from their brand? How does that actually turn the tide and get people on our side? We had the Gray Davis playbook where we were able to get the governor recalled and put a Republican in place. Didn't vote for the guy, okay, because he wasn't a real Republican.
wasn't a
But we had the
Republican.
opportunity to get a real Republican in there, right?
You just argued against your own argument.
No, I didn't. No, because
Who
if
paid
we,
for the recall?
who paid for the recall?
Yeah.
Didn't Darrell Issa pay for the recall?
Correct.
Right.
Who became governor?
Who? Arnold did.
And who put in cap and trade?
Arnold did.
Okay.
No, I didn't vote for Arnold, okay? And Arnold's not a Republican. The reason why
I just wondered why you made the opposite of your own argument.
No,
But okay.
no, because that's a classic example of the problem with the party as it is. The California Republican Party put Arnold in there because he had the money, he had the glitz, he had the glamour, he didn't have the principles, okay? So no, I didn't counter my own argument. I'm actually making the argument perfectly. We're tired of having squishy rhinos, such as yourself, going up to Sacramento and selling us out. And that's what you did. There's absolutely no reason to vote for you or the Republicans in the primary next year round, or in November. You could have Abigail Medina in your seat right now, and there isn't one vote that you voted on in the last 6 months where the outcome would have changed if she was in there. In fact, the argument can be made that Abigail Medina would have been a no vote or an abstention on this bill that you just voted yes on. So I don't understand how in good conscience you can run for office, tell the people that you're running to get their vote from, that you are against cap and trade, that your opponent supports cap and trade, and then you go up there and you support cap and trade, and yet we're somehow supposed to support you, they're supposed to trust you and think that you're going to do the right thing?
Well, it's clear that you have your agenda, and I understand you get compensated for.
I do not get
putting these two
compensated.
bills together.
I am, first of all, hold on. Why would you say I get compensated? Who do you think's compensating me?
My point being,
No. You just said I get compensated. Nobody paid me one penny to come here.
okay, my point
So
being.
why would you say I'm compensated?
My point being, I have explained that by engaging in this dialogue, by negotiating, we were able to reform really bad legislation to something that the industries begged for. The industries that create jobs, that sustain our economy, are grateful that we're able to reform the legislation to the point where it's tolerable. So to make the distinction that there wouldn't have been a dime's worth of difference between myself or anybody else in that seat, I believe that absolutely is political spin. Because the amount of effective reforms that were put in this legislation are tremendous. To be able to potentially kill the bullet train is something that I was told could not be done, and it possibly
It hasn't been
could
killed. It hasn't been killed. First of all, the
Possibly
voters
could.
I think it's on.
that is spin.
I
That is
believe
spin.
I believe it is going to be gone because of this vote specifically. I also know that the $16 billion in tax cuts that were passed through are significant for the industries. I believe that that's a big deal. And I also believe the 200,000 jobs that were saved as a direct result of reforming this legislation really matters. And I believe that given the choice again, even with the amount of backlash that has come from people on the very far right, I would absolutely do that decision again.
The far
because
right.
See, now we're
The
the
far
far
right.
right. Now, I don't get compensated. I work
Nobody
50
gets
hours
Nobody here
a
gets
week.
compensated.
Nobody
Job
gets
and the rest
compensated.
of
We
the
gotta take
semester, and
vacation to be
everything else
here.
on the side because I love my party, I love the people that I get to know, I love my state. But I think that there's been a trust broken, that we can't trust you on future votes
Right.
to stand with the side of the conservatives, because I'm not a Republican,
Sure.
I'm Tea Party,
Right.
because I stand for the Constitution and conservative values. So I think that's where it's coming from,
Right.
is that there's like a trust broken
Let
on
me
the
ask you a question,
platform.
and I respect that. Let me ask you a question. So, if you have a choice between saving California's economy or proving a political point, which way are you going to side?
That's such a big
May I
argument.
interject here a minute?
Yeah, that's such a big
Just for a
argument.
minute. You say that you had Cal State San Bernardino and Loma Linda sitting here begging you to make this thing better for them.
Well, I said industries were begging. Loma Linda and Cal State were talking about how it would detrimentally impact them if it was not extended.
Okay. Cal State, or the UFC is part of the state of California. It's funded by the state of California. I would assume that they probably had a good deal of pull, considering the
Is it
dollars.
USC?
The UC system.
Oh, right.
That's our system. We pay for it. We fund it. It's part of the state. And you say that they have to come to you to beg for help,
No, we put
and
together
that
a
Loma
statement.
Linda is a major employer in this state. And they have money for campaigns. UC has money for campaigns. Trucking industries have money for campaigns. All of these people, if this was going to impact them so horribly, should have let us know, the American people, if you allow this to go on, then this is what we're going to have to do. This is the impact it's going to have on you. But none of that was done.
Okay, so, but I understand the frustration. This is, if I could just boil this down. What I believe is you're under the misunderstanding that there is a imminent gas tax increase,
I'm not
63
talking
to
about gas
71
tax.
cents.
Cap and trade is a tax. It costs us all money.
Mhm.
These industries have to pass that tax along.
Mhm.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't think that they pay for it out of the goodness of their hearts,
Okay.
because I know better, I'm not stupid.
Okay.
But you're sitting here telling me that all of these people say that you made it a better impact. Well, that's great, because that means less tax for us, hopefully. But they don't have the money, these trucking firms don't have the money to put a coalition together and do some major advertising throughout the state, that the UC system doesn't have pressure to put on the state legislature. I'm sorry, Mark, I'm just not,
Okay, so
I'm
so
not
we have
buying
two
that.
options of the Air Resource Board effectively doing command and control, or you have industries having a quasi-market-based system that was reformed where they can survive and possibly prosper in that quasi-market-based system. I'm not going to say it's market-based because it's not completely market-based, but it certainly is more market-based than complete command and control, top-down, where
well,
we see
then
the
we could
cost
deal with
dramatically
the issue
increase.
of the Air Resource Board.
Yeah.
And we can do it honestly with a conversation with the people of the state of California. When they're commercials, they could come out and say, we're between a rock and a hard place, guys.
Well,
What would you-
Let the
They-
Democrats own it. Let the Democrats own
See,
it.
that's-
Yeah, but you jumped in and saved it.
I know.
So I need you out in like 2 minutes. 'cause I have
Okay,
to drive you here.
but this gentleman just said the phrase that I think is really the challenge. This is where we're going to disagree.
Okay?
Is you made the comment of let them own it.
Yes.
Okay, I can't stand over the carcass of the state of California's economy and point to someone and say let them own it, as all of those middle class families' jobs are eliminated.
Every
I
election
won't.
cycle, you and other
Mark, those
Republicans.
middle-class jobs are gonna be eliminated anyways.
Yep.
That's right.
No.
And you
Yes.
and every other Republican run and say the Democrats are running the state off
I
the
hope to
cliff.
God I'm wrong, but
And
from the research that's,
I understand and I believe your sincerity, Judy. I've known you for a long time and I truly believe that you are a diehard on the cause and you believe it from your heart. I do. But you also have to understand my job, my responsibility is to represent everybody and to represent the state of California as in the macro, but certainly the 40th Assembly District. And when you look and you speak with all of the constituents that I do, I understood based on the facts that were presented to me and based on the information and the research and the time that went into it, that I was presented with two clear-cut decisions. And I chose the one that helps middle-class families.
Well-
I will not sacrifice the jobs in California to try and prove a political point.
Well-
I won't be that person. I never will be that person. I will always be the consensus builder. I will be the representative that represents everybody in the 40th Assembly District. I respect that we will disagree on this. I do.
Well, in
And I hope
2018,
over time-
you can ask the Democrats and you can ask the decline of state people and you can ask all these families to walk door to door for you and make calls because last time I checked, you ran as a conservative, did you not?
I respect the fact that you
No.
have your questions,
Okay.
and I do appreciate that you came in to meet with me. And you know I've always had an open door policy. It's something that I take very, very close to heart. And I've answered as many phone calls as I can, and I will continue to answer as many phone calls as I receive, emails, texts. I just want to make sure that you had your voice heard and
Fair enough.
hear my
And
side
thank
as
you for
well.
that.
Can I get you to retract and apologize for claiming that I'm paid to be here? No, seriously, because I asked you a question about Rocky Chavez and you said you didn't have the facts, you didn't know what you were talking about. You just made a statement saying I was paid, I'm not paid. Can I- Mr. Steinorth, you're not gonna retract or apologize? Mr. Steinorth,
Good to see you. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it.
thanks.
Well, this is really gonna affect me, I'm serious.
No on SB 100, okay? There, I got my voice in.
I do believe that.
Me too. I'm not gonna lie, I was a little upset yesterday.
I gave my word. I had already packed it. I wanted to get you guys in this week because I didn't
Do
know.
I get an apology? You're planning on paid when I'm
Make
not?
anyone feel like they were being ignored.
No?
So,
Oh, thank you, sir.
yeah,
Appreciate it.
exactly. So, you know, I wasn't getting it. So, I mean, the next thing is 15 minutes and he has to drive there, so whatever. I mean, he'll be a little late. But I didn't want to, yeah, thank you guys. I appreciate you guys being here and I told you I would give you a meeting. There's trust there. It's like a dating relationship. Or I should be a marriage. Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, we don't make hardly nothing. They took away, the county used to pay for our retirement. Now we gotta pay for our own. So I make less now than I made in 2008.
She's a white supremacist, don't fall into it.
No.
Anybody else any water?
Oh, yeah, I'd love one.
No, I'm good in the water.
I was a little scared walking out in this hallway, I was having some flashes.
Oh, here.
No,
Trauma
that's
zone.
That hall looks so long, and it's really quite short.
Let me turn my, uh-oh.
What are you looking for?
I don't know if this recorded or not.
Well,
Yeah, it's still going.
That way because he went.
Yeah, he went that way.
The Merle's office is that way?
Yeah, because he went that way.